Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on whether or not Washington is broken, and if so, does it need fixing? And we have some opinion about whether or not it's broken. You know, one of the interesting criticisms that I want to talk about with my two guests, the former Lieutenant Governor of the state of Colorado, Barbara O'Brien, and the former Congressman from the state of Colorado, Tom Tancredo. And I won't list all your other accolades. We'll put those on the screen later. But you know, one of the I think interesting aspects is that certainly when you look at all the survey research data, and what really you were talking about, Tom, in the first show, is the polarization of the country, and that we're more polarized today, according to some studies, than we've been in 150 years or longer, and that the Congress, interesting enough, when you look at positions on issues, and especially the House, is more polarized than it's ever been in terms of any type of measurement that's been done. If you accept that as true, I guess one of the questions is, should there be any type of special effort to find ways or encourage ways for people to work together to find solutions or not? And that's what you were kind of, I think, talking about before, Barbara. Not saying that people should give up their philosophies, but is Washington dysfunctional in the sense that it's not solving the big problems? Barbara, I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, there's been some statistical look at what districts are like these days, and if I remember correctly, we have the fewest number of swing districts in the country in a very long time. And I think that means that people come from like-minded citizens that all agree, and you have them elect people who don't feel they need to negotiate or compromise because the vast majority in their personal district agree with their position. So when we have fewer and fewer people who do have to walk a line between a constituency that is diverse in its opinion about these national problems, I think you do get people who don't feel a need to compromise and feel as if they're right and they were elected to hold out a position, knowing, I mean, we had an election, and as President Obama said, elections have consequences. And yet you don't get a sense that the House of Representatives in particular is feeling like, all right, he campaigned on certain things, he won, so that's one stake in the ground, and somehow we have to figure out how to make this work, and fewer elected people feeling their own constituents are divided and want them to find a path forward.
We just had a national election that showed that the country is divided, even not in just congressional districts, but of course nationally. The president won, but he won by several 100,000 votes out of how many million that were cast?
I think he won by 4 million.
Well, okay, but if you look at the electoral vote, you know, how it occurred in each state, how
Right.
the electoral vote played out, a few 100,000 votes would have changed the election.
But it was still pretty lopsided in his favor.
Well, okay, 4 million votes. How many votes were cast in that election?
Over 100 million.
Over 100 million.
I would guess about roughly 120 million.
Yeah, I can't remember myself, but I think that's a pretty
It's a good guess.
a pretty good guess. And so I still don't think that 4 million votes, even out of 120 million, is a mandate. And so you have this.
And
now,
yet President Bush claimed he had a mandate in an election that was separated by what?
You can claim
500 votes.
Yeah, you can claim anything you want. The president, you remember when President Obama, after his first election, was challenged about all of the things that we were doing that were certainly controversial, and I remember his response, I won. That's what he said. I won. So therefore, I am going to dictate. Well, of course, there are going to be people who disagree with that.
This is what's wrong with Washington. That you have very smart, opinionated people who feel very right, and when they talk about others with different opinions or in the other party, it's not with respect, it's not with a sense of, all right, here's a reality we have to work with. It's looking for these little arguments that can undermine the other person, rather than saying, that's over, and we have huge problems, and can we please put all of that energy and intelligence into solutions that a divided country can support.
But I didn't hear. I mean, I didn't hear Tom at least I didn't hear Tom personally attacking the president. I heard him.
Well, but it's 100,000 votes, or I mean, it's all of these things that
Well,
sort of
he's
demean.
expressing, right, no, well, he's expressing an opinion that he doesn't think a 4 million vote margin is as big a deal as the president may think and others. But my guess is Tom's wrong, because I think a lot of people didn't think he'd have any vote margin.
Boy, that's the truth.
And the fact, and what I would remind Tom is the fact that Obama won in an economy that no other president has won re-election other is an absolutely stunning victory.
I totally agree. I must tell you that certainly I believe that it would have been closer, and I really believe that Romney had a chance, although he wasn't my pick from the start. But
were you your pick from the start? Or no?
Yeah, that's right. Who could do better? But I certainly thought that indeed, even if we lost the presidential race, we would pick up seats in the Senate. That was almost a given.
Right. Everyone, all the pundits said that. And what happened? Democrats picked up 2 seats in the Senate.
Yeah.
No, so it's certainly. I mean.
So let's give. So Republicans,
the mandate is
give
in
up, go home, forget about it. Why should you argue your point in the Congress of the United States? The president won.
Arguing your point is different than finding reasons to tear each other down.
Well, but tear each other down because you argue on policy, Barbara, because you argue on issues, that doesn't mean you're tearing anybody else down.
I'm not concerned about. I want robust, vigorous debate. That's not what I'm talking about. It's these, like your first reaction is to say, well, he actually just won by a little bit, so actually there shouldn't be much of a consequence.
But he's trying to make himself feel a little better. That's
yeah, that's right.
After you lose that,
I'm still suffering from PESS, post-election stress syndrome.
Yes. So going forward, we have a divided country. We have a number of years that have led to people in Washington not trusting each other, not thinking they'll be true to their words, going home and being validated for being hardcore on both sides. So how can we start sending the message from the constituency, the voters, that they've got to get their acts together, they need to solve some of these problems, they need to debate them out and find some middle ground and get us going forward.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk about some of those possibilities, but also want to talk about kind of the reasons for those divisions, because I think that while the people in the country, I think the message has been, we want you to solve the big problems, there's a big gap between that concept that we want you to fix things and how different groups and how individuals think those problems should be fixed. And to me, that's where you have a huge separation. So we'll talk about how we're going to solve all the problems in Washington when we come back with Barbara O'Brien and Tom Tancredo.
There's more of the Aaron Harber Show after this. Coming up next.
We all despise negative advertising, but it seems to work. I know I'm considered to be, Dr. Evil, in terms of my politics or something, but I'm telling you, I'd much rather run a race solely on issues